The biggest difference between a single-stage snow thrower like this and a two-stage snowblower like this is right back here. This is called an impeller, and it's basically a high-powered fan that takes all of the snow from the auger area and throws it up and out of the chute. Because of that impeller, this thing can keep that chute clear at all times, and it can actually throw snow 50 feet or more with ease. The next big difference is cost. As you can imagine, something like this is going to cost a whole lot more than a machine like this. Two stages typically cost at least about $600 and go up from there. They can even be several $1,000s. A single stage like this you can pick up for about a couple $100s and up, though the nicer they are, of course, the more they cost, but they're almost always going to be less expensive than any two-stage out there. That cost is because two stages are a lot more expensive to produce. I mean, just look at the tires, for example, on this thing. This has these huge, gnarly tires that are knobbed and they're powerful, as opposed to these little plastic guys that you get over here. Obviously, the features will play a huge difference in cost, and those will vary wildly from different brands to different models to different stages of snowblowers that you have. On this one, for example, this one has heated handles. I love the heated handles, and I can't believe that this much more expensive and nicer two-stage one doesn't have heated handles. I don't know why it doesn't have these. So I can actually use this one without gloves, and it works pretty well. On the flip side of that, if I need to adjust the angle at which I'm throwing, which I do quite a bit, you've got to grab the handle here and use it like this and do it manually. So it's not ideal. Whereas on this one, I've got everything I need right here. Up and down, just like that, and I can do it right up here on the deck. I really never have to go touch anything in this area. Everything I need is right here on the deck. Both of these machines have LED headlights that work pretty well, and so there's a lot of things that they share as far as being comparable one to the other, but in some areas, this one's got better heated grips, and this one's got better maneuverability as I'm snowblowing. Now, whether you're looking at electric like these two by Ego or gas, that cost difference is going to be there pretty much regardless. Difference number 5 on this list is the fact that these two-stage snowblowers are almost always self-propelled. If you take a look at those huge tires that I mentioned before, those are actually engaged by the motor inside to move this thing at whatever speed you need, and you've got a separate speed gear right here to move this at high speed or down in reverse speed even if you need to go backwards. So as you're running this thing forward, you can choose the speed at which you're going, and it's going to move that for you, and you really just have to have one hand on it and it will do the job super easily. A lot of these single-stage snowblowers are also advertised as being self-propelled, but that's because if you come around front here, they have an auger that's lined with either rubber or leather, and what that's doing is making direct contact with the ground that pulls the machine forward as it moves. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to move the same way that an actual self-propelled two-stage blower is going to move. In fact, it is kind of a night and day difference from one to the next, and we'll talk more about that in some of the next differences. The next difference on our list is size and maneuverability. When you look at a single stage like this, you can see its footprint is much smaller than a two-stage pretty much every time. It can often be folded up and is a little bit more compact to work with. It takes up less space in your shed or in your garage. And as far as maneuverability, this thing is more like a car. You can back this into whatever space you need to. You can twist it on a tighter curve. You can really get done what you need to get done pretty easily without a lot of effort because this machine is lighter and more nimble, kind of like a car compared to a truck or a van, for example. And that's where this one is more like an A-Team van. I grew up in the 80s and loved the A-Team stuff. In fact, this is a picture of me holding my A-Team van that I got for Christmas one year that I loved and probably beat to death. But this is more like the A-Team van. So this one is big, it's bulky, it's not as maneuverable, but it's strong and it's tough. So you're not going to have that same nimble ability that you have when driving a car, but it is going to give you more power. It's also going to take up more space. This thing is a lot less breakdownable, if you will. It's not going to be so easy to fit this in a tight space, and it's just a bigger footprint in general. Now, believe it or not, these two are actually kind of in the middle of the range of nimbleness and agility when it comes to snow blowers and snow throwers. If you want something that's more like the Mini Cooper in the Italian Job, then you're going to want to go with a power shovel. This is light, it's fast, it's super nimble, and you can do whatever you want with it, but it's not that powerful. You're not going to be able to get through these 12-inch snow drifts and heavy or wet snow or anything like that. It's lighter and it's weaker, but it's definitely the most nimble out there. And on the other end of the spectrum are three-stage snow blowers. These have 3 different phases of grabbing the snow, pushing the snow towards the middle, and tossing it out the chute. And these things often come with treads, like tank treads. I mean, it's more like driving a tank using one of those. They're way less common, but if you need something that's super heavy duty, that's what you're looking for. Number 3 on our list is capacity. When you're using a single stage, there's a few things you need to keep in mind, and we'll cover this in a little bit more depth towards the first tip. But basically, if you've got snow like this is good packing snow. This is great for snowballs. It packs up really nice because it's a little heavier, it's a little wetter, and it makes it great for snowballs and snowmen, but this one doesn't handle it nearly as well as a 2-stage. In fact, if you've got a couple of inches of snow that's like this, it will handle it just fine. But if you have more than that, or if the snow is much wetter, you start to see what's called clogging in the chute. And this is super annoying. And you will get clog after clog after clog under the wrong circumstances. Now don't get me wrong, this can handle a lot of different levels of snow, a lot of different weights of snow pretty well, but if it's not something that's kind of optimal for it, you're gonna spend a lot of time clearing stuff out of the chute right here. I did a quick search, and between 2003 and 2018, in that 15-year span, there were over 41,000 emergency room visits due to this. People putting their hands in the chute here, which you should never do. Always make sure this is turned off before you do anything in here. In that time span, there were lacerations, there were fractures, there were amputations, all because of the chute. So do not, under any circumstances, put your hand or even an object down there while this auger is spinning. It will mess you up, and you don't want to learn that firsthand, of course. Oh, no pun intended, seriously didn't mean to say that. Anyway, so this one is actually really dangerous if you leave it on. And it's more likely to clog, way more likely to clog than a 2-stage. A 2-stage can still get clogged, but because of that impeller, it's gonna do a much better job of keeping that chute clean all the time. So as far as a safety measure, the 2-stage is a lot safer to use, and it's a lot less frustrating, honestly, not having to clean this thing out. In my limited experience with this, just using it over the last couple of months, I've seen it clog again and again and again, and it can be really annoying. Second to last on our list is inclinability and speed. Now these are very different when it comes to these two factors. My yard is on a slight slope, and we have a really long sidewalk. So our driveway is sloped as well, and this was a good testing ground for comparing. What I found was that I sometimes struggled to get up the driveway with the single stage thrower, but it really depends almost entirely on the conditions. If the driveway was totally clear before it snowed, so no snowpack or ice or anything like that, then it could handle it so long as there wasn't too much snow and it wasn't too wet. Now going downhill, no problem. This thing really handled that pretty well. I could get a clog sometimes, but it had no problem moving downhill and tossing the snow. The sidewalk, on the other hand, was a real challenge, with a single stage at least. Take a look at me trying to remove just a few inches of snow on the slight slope of the sidewalk here. I had to really muscle the machine up the sidewalk, and it was kind of like trying to break through a wall. In this case, I was trying to hold my camera at the same time, so that didn't help, but it was way more difficult than I would have expected. Now compare that to the 2-stage snowblower here, where I can walk behind it, do no pushing at all, and even just hold it with one hand on the safety trigger to keep it moving forward. It's moving itself forward pretty effortlessly. But that brings us to speed. What you may not know or see here is that this machine was in its fastest speed mode. Different snowblowers will have different top speeds, but this is a pretty powerful machine, but its top speed is not too impressive. For lighter snow, you can grab the single stage and make quick work of a job, moving much faster, again, as long as you have the right circumstances and it's fairly flat and the snow is not too heavy, but it can generally operate much faster than a 2-stage snowblower. Now before I get to our number 1 difference, I have to point out that which snowblower you go with, whether it's a single stage or a 2-stage or even a shovel or a 3-stage snowblower, really depends on a few different things. Number 1 is what is the type of snow that you're getting in your area. If you're getting tons of snow, but it's fairly light, then maybe you can get away with the single stage. But if it's heavy, wet snow, you're really gonna wanna get a 2-stage because that impeller will make all the difference. If you've got an area where there's a lot of incline, however, and you've got a steep driveway, you're gonna really struggle using a single stage. And I'll tell you from experience that if you get the wrong type of snowblower, it can actually be more of a frustration than a benefit when you're trying to clear snow. As for the argument between gas-powered and electric like these are both Ego battery-operated snowblowers and snow throwers. It's really up to you. The other aspect of that is the cost of batteries. Anytime you can get a snowblower that comes with batteries, whether it's 1 or 2 or 4, get that battery kit. It's gonna save you tons of money. And those larger capacity batteries make a huge difference. You can get a 5 amp hour or a 4 amp hour, but if you start getting into the 8s and the 10s and even a 12, which is what Ego makes here, I've got the 10s and these things last forever. I can take this one out, for example, on my 2 10 amp hour batteries and get through 5 people's driveways plus their sidewalks. And the last time I did that, the batteries ran out just as I was getting back to my house after having done mine and 4 other driveways. It is a pretty impressive battery life on these things if you get those larger capacity batteries. Now, just to be totally clear, everything in this video is non-sponsored. I purchased this snowblower and this one and the batteries and everything you see here completely out of pocket. No one is sponsoring this. You buy what works for you, whether it's gas or electric, single or 2-stage, that's totally up to you. My goal here is to inform you and educate you as to which might be the best for your particular circumstances. Now, because I always get asked, where do you get these or which ones do you have, I'll put all of the model information about these particular ones and some that I recommend in the links in the description below. In fact, there's a little shopping icon in the corner here where you can find these 2 specific sets or kits right at Lowe's, and you can buy them directly and have them shipped right to your house, which is what I did for this one, and then this one I picked it up in store. All that leads us to our number 1 difference on the list, which is the clean shave factor. That's what I call it anyway. Basically, you're gonna get 2 different results when you use this on concrete or pavement versus when you use a 2-stage. And that's because that rubber or leather-lined auger that I mentioned before, that's actually making direct contact with the concrete or the pavement all the time. It's gonna leave it nice and clean, especially if there was no previous snow on there or ice or anything that had built up. It can get right down to that concrete, right down to that pavement, and do a nice clean shave on it. Our 2-stage friend over here can do a pretty good job, but there's 2 big differences. Number 1, it's running on what are called skid shoes. That's these green plates right here. Now, these tend to be both adjustable and replaceable because they can wear over time, but that's their purpose. Their purpose is to help the machine kind of float along a little bit. And then underneath, inside here, you've got a metal scoop. That scoop is gonna get as close to the ground as these skid shoes will allow it. This gives you a little bit of adjustability, but it typically means you're never gonna get quite as clean of a shave, as it were, as the single stage counterpart over here. Now, that may sound like a major drawback, and in some cases it is. You can do a pretty good job, but like I say, it's never gonna be as good. But the big difference is that when it comes to not concrete or not pavement, if you have a gravel driveway, if you have a crushed concrete driveway, if you have a trail, if you have a dirt road, anything like that, where it's not perfectly smooth and perfectly dense material, then this thing is gonna be light years ahead of what the single stage can do. Just by way of example, right next to my house is my wood shop. In my wood shop, there is not a sidewalk going from there to the front door of my house, and so that grass gets walked on a million times a week as I go back and forth throughout. Guess what happens if I try to use my single stage on that? You probably guessed by now, it's gonna really just churn up. Because that rubber or leather padding on here is making direct contact with the ground, it's grabbing the grass and ripping out bald spots. It's even gonna potentially pick up dirt and toss it out the chute here. My 2-stage over here is using these skid shoes, and they basically help it to kind of float along the top of that uneven surface, like grass or gravel or things like that. And that makes it so that you can do this without kicking up a bunch of debris and things that you do not want to remove from where you're trying to do your snow blowing. Now, for many of you watching this, you don't have to worry about gravel or grass or those sorts of things. You've got a sidewalk, you've got a driveway, and then your only factors are how much of an incline do you have and what kind of snow are you getting. So those 2 factors are really pivotal to making a decision between a single stage and a 2-stage. I'm Nils with Learn to DIY. Thanks for watching.